On September 9, 2025, the world was stunned by news of an Israeli airstrike in the heart of Qatar's capital, a first in history. The attack, which took place in the early hours of the morning, shattered the sense of security that Doha had long enjoyed. For decades, Qatar had positioned itself as a diplomatic hub, a neutral ground for negotiations and back-channel talks, making this strike all the more shocking and unprecedented. This bold move shattered a long-standing regional taboo, sending shockwaves from Washington to Tehran and upending diplomatic calculations. The immediate aftermath saw frantic phone calls between capitals, emergency meetings at the United Nations, and a flurry of statements from governments around the globe. Allies and adversaries alike were forced to reconsider their positions, as the rules of engagement in the Middle East seemed to change overnight. Israel's strike, targeting Hamas leadership in Doha, marked a dramatic escalation and risked severe diplomatic fallout, especially given Qatar's status as a U.S. ally and host to a major American base. The operation was meticulously planned, with Israeli jets reportedly evading advanced air defenses to reach their target. The presence of American forces in Qatar added a layer of complexity, raising questions about prior knowledge and the potential for unintended confrontation between allies. The attack signaled that Israel would pursue its enemies anywhere, but at the cost of alienating partners and destabilizing the region. Qatar, long seen as a mediator, now found itself at the center of a geopolitical storm. Regional leaders condemned the strike, warning of dangerous precedents and the risk of wider conflict. The diplomatic fallout was immediate, with some nations recalling ambassadors and others threatening economic retaliation. The implications are vast, forcing every nation with a stake in the Middle East to reassess alliances and strategies in a suddenly more perilous landscape. As the world watches closely, the balance of power in the region hangs in the balance, and the potential for further escalation remains high. The events of September 9th have not only rewritten the rules of engagement, but have also left the future of Middle Eastern diplomacy more uncertain than ever before. In the early hours of the morning, the city of Doha was rocked by a sudden and devastating Israeli airstrike. The target, a residential compound believed to be sheltering senior Hamas leaders who had been operating from the Qatari capital for months, if not years. The attack sent shockwaves through the city, shattering the sense of security that many residents had taken for granted. Despite the precision of the strike, the main Hamas figures managed to escape unharmed, slipping away in the chaos that followed the explosions. Their survival was a blow to Israeli intelligence, which had invested significant resources in tracking their movements. Tragically, the attack claimed the lives of 5 individuals affiliated with Hamas, including the son of a prominent leader. The loss sent ripples of grief through their families and supporters, who gathered at the scene in mourning. Among the dead was also a Qatari security officer, a casualty that transformed the operation from a targeted strike into a direct assault on Qatar's sovereignty. The presence of Qatari emergency personnel underscored the gravity of the situation. Israeli officials, relying on what they believed was flawless intelligence, had hoped for a decisive blow. But the failure to eliminate their primary targets raised immediate questions about the operation's planning and execution, both within Israel and among its allies. The diplomatic fallout was swift and severe. By striking a sovereign nation, Israel risked alienating key regional partners and igniting a broader crisis. International condemnation poured in, with many questioning the legality and wisdom of the operation. Inside Israel, however, the response was sharply divided. Hardliners and right-wing politicians praised the boldness of the move, seeing it as a necessary step in the fight against Hamas, regardless of the diplomatic cost. On the world stage, the airstrike was widely condemned as reckless and destabilizing. International leaders voiced concern that such actions could escalate tensions and undermine efforts for peace in the region. For Hamas, the survival of its leaders was quickly spun into a narrative of resilience and defiance. Spokespersons declared victory, using the incident to rally supporters and strengthen their propaganda efforts. The failed assassination attempt became a powerful tool for Hamas, fueling public celebrations in Gaza and reinforcing their image as survivors in the face of overwhelming odds. In the aftermath, diplomatic channels between Israel, Qatar, and other regional players have been severely damaged. The prospects for peace and ongoing hostage negotiations now hang in the balance, with trust eroded and tensions at an all-time high. the White House responded with unusual speed and urgency, as the news of Israel's unexpected military action sent shockwaves through Washington. Within hours, senior officials scrambled to assess the situation, convening emergency meetings and reaching out to allies across the region. The administration's initial reaction was one of surprise, bordering on disbelief, as they tried to piece together the motivations behind Israel's decision and its potential consequences for U.S. interests. President Trump, known for his often unpredictable style, made no effort to hide his rare public anger at Israel's unilateral action. In front of reporters, his frustration was palpable, his tone sharper than usual, his words carefully chosen but unmistakably critical. For an administration that had prided itself on a close relationship with Israel, this moment marked a significant departure from the usual script. Official statements from the White House described the strike as unfortunate, a word that barely concealed the administration's deeper concerns. The statements emphasized that the operation did not serve American interests, nor did it advance the prospects for peace in the region. Behind the scenes, officials worried about the long-term impact on America's credibility as a mediator and partner in the Middle East. The U.S. now faces a complex diplomatic crisis, forced to balance its historic support for Israel with its vital partnership with Qatar and other regional players. American diplomats worked overtime, reaching out to both Israeli and Qatari officials, trying to contain the fallout and prevent further escalation. The stakes were high. Any misstep could jeopardize years of delicate negotiations and alliances. Behind closed doors, President Trump personally called Qatar's emir, offering reassurances that the attack would not be repeated. He sought to distance himself from Prime Minister Netanyahu's decision, making it clear that the United States had not endorsed the operation. This private outreach underscored the administration's anxiety about losing trust with key partners in the region. Meanwhile, conflicting reports about whether the U.S. had been notified in advance fueled a sense of chaos and mistrust, both within the administration and among America's allies. Newsrooms buzzed with speculation, and headlines questioned the strength of the U.S.-Israel alliance. The uncertainty only deepened the crisis, making it harder for officials to present a unified front. The episode laid bare the limits of U.S.-Israel coordination, exposing the personal frustration of a president who felt blindsided by an ally he had long supported. Trump's inner circle debated how to respond, torn between public condemnation and the need to preserve a critical partnership. The sense of betrayal was real, and it threatened to reshape the administration's approach to the region. Now, America finds itself forced to juggle its alliances in a region already on edge, navigating a delicate balance between loyalty, strategy, and the unpredictable realities of Middle Eastern politics. The White House faces tough choices ahead, as every move will be closely watched by friends and foes alike. Qatar's response was immediate and furious, denouncing the Israeli strike as a criminal assault and a violation of sovereignty. Doha took its case to the UN Security Council, vowing to defend its territory and people by any means necessary. The death of a Qatari officer made a passive response politically impossible. The attack threatens Qatar's role as a regional mediator, shattering its carefully balanced diplomacy. Expelling Hamas or doing nothing, both carry major risks for Qatar's credibility. The leadership now faces tough choices, each with significant consequences for its foreign policy. Israel's strike was not just a military act, it was a direct challenge to Qatar's standing in the world. The global response was swift and overwhelmingly negative. Turkey's President Erdogan condemned the strike as state terrorism and pledged support for Qatar, deepening regional divides. The Palestinian Authority, despite its rivalry with Hamas, joined in outrage, uniting Palestinians in anger against Israel. European leaders, including the UK's Keir Starmer, warned the attack risked a wider regional war and undermined international stability. The chorus of condemnation highlights Israel's growing isolation after the Doha strike. Allies and adversaries alike see the move as reckless, endangering diplomatic efforts and pushing the region closer to conflict. The diplomatic price for Israel is steep and still rising. The airstrike in Doha cast a dark shadow over hostage negotiations mediated by Qatar. Families of Israeli hostages now fear the attack has doomed any chance of their loved ones' safe return. Targeting Hamas leaders in Qatar undermined trust and credibility, making further talks nearly impossible. Hamas may now harden its stance or walk away, using the incident as justification. The Israeli government faces backlash from hostage families who see the strike as endangering captives. The operation handed Hamas a propaganda victory and weakened international leverage for a deal. Hopes for a peaceful resolution have never looked more remote. The Israeli strike in Qatar ignited a volatile region, triggering immediate escalation. Israel ordered the evacuation of Gaza City, signaling preparations for a major military operation. The Houthi movement in Yemen responded with another missile attack on Israel, underscoring the interconnectedness of regional conflicts. The humanitarian crisis in Gaza deepened, with over 1 million people displaced and aid stretched to the breaking point. The Arab world views these moves as a prelude to ethnic cleansing, fueling further outrage. Each action and reaction pushes the region closer to a multi-front war. The Middle East now teeters on the brink, with the world anxiously watching for signs of either diplomacy or disaster. Israel's decision to strike Doha was driven by domestic pressure and a desire to project strength, but it's backfired. Many analysts doubt Israel would act without at least tacit U.S. approval, despite public denials. The fallout has destabilized U.S.-Israel-Qatar relations, forcing Washington into a delicate balancing act. Qatar, a key U.S. partner, cannot ignore the violation of its sovereignty without losing face. The incident may force Qatar to reconsider its mediation role, and security ties with the U.S. Israel risked much for a goal it failed to achieve, leaving it more isolated and the region more volatile. The gamble has exposed the dangers of prioritizing military action over diplomacy. The Doha strike is a global issue, not just a regional one. Escalation in the Middle East threatens energy supplies and economies worldwide. The attack undermined diplomatic channels essential for peace, making future negotiations riskier everywhere. If mediators can be targeted, trust in diplomacy erodes, increasing the risk of endless conflict. The incident tests international law and the principle of sovereignty, setting a dangerous precedent. The world must now choose between upholding these principles or accepting a new era of unchecked military action. The choices made in the coming days will shape whether the world moves toward peace or deeper conflict.